Yes, that doesn't look good for the iPhone 16 Pro, but you'd be wrong to think that the iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max has a significantly worse camera. Both the Pocket 3 and the iPhone 16 Pro have their pros and cons. Whether it makes sense to buy a Pocket 3 or whether it's better to save the money and invest in an iPhone, we'll find out today. There are 11 categories and 1 point for the winner of each category. So what really is the best mobile video camera? Of course, we start with the most important category in this comparison: image quality. And this is determined to a large and important extent by the colors, contrast and exposure. And no matter what I say today, take a careful look at these comparison shots and decide for yourself which look you like better. What is noticeable in all the shots is that the Pocket 3 produces a much cooler look. There are more blue tones. In terms of the colors alone, the shot therefore looks more cinematic. On the other hand, the iPhone's shot looks warmer, which is better and more beautiful, is of course a matter of taste. It's also noticeable that the Pocket 3's shot has more contrast. The dark areas in the image appear much darker, whereas the iPhone produces much brighter shadows and therefore has visibly more detail in the dark areas. I would even say that there is probably a certain amount of HDR processing going on in the background on the iPhone. And this is also likely to lead to a slight flickering in the image when faster movements occur in difficult lighting conditions. We'll take a closer look at the dynamic range in more detail later. The look also affects the skin tones, of course. And here both cameras sometimes overdo it in my eyes. There are situations where the iPhone skin tones just look too yellow, and other situations where they just look too gray and colorless on the Pocket 3. As you probably know, the iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max doesn't have just one camera, it actually has 3 cameras. Although the Pocket 3 also has an additional ultra-wide lens attachment, the camera always remains the same. With the iPhone, not only the focal length of the lens changes depending on the camera, but also the aperture and the sensor size. And what many people don't realize, with a sensor of 1/1.28 inches and an aperture of 1.78, the iPhone's main camera has specs that are not that far off from the Pocket 3. The Pocket 3 has a 1-inch sensor and an aperture of 2. Sensor size and aperture are important and create that super cool background blur that gives the Pocket 3 its cinematic look. But this also applies to the iPhone, at least if you use the main camera, which also creates a beautiful and cinematic background blur. Although here you must hold the camera a little further away and then often find it difficult to get the framing right, at least if you are filming yourself. But no matter with which lens you film on the iPhone 16 Pro, the colors and contrast always look the same. I also did a test in artificial light and particularly difficult lighting conditions. And this is perhaps where the biggest differences in this comparison occur. The iPhone manages to expose the face a little better and, let's say, make it look a little nicer. In comparison, the shot of the Pocket 3 looks a bit raw and dull. On the other hand, the image on the iPhone also looks more unnatural. If you want to edit the colors of your shots, you should use a log profile. Both cameras also offer a log profile. With the iPhone, however, this is only available in combination with ProRes, which limits its usefulness somewhat. And although ProRes is well suited for video editing, it leads to enormous amounts of data. On the Pocket 3, it's noticeable that the camera no longer adjusts the exposure completely to the face when shooting in log, which is of course a disadvantage, as this can result in underexposed shots. To summarize, I can say that both devices usually produce a very nice, albeit different look. And even though I know that this is very subjective, I prefer the look of the Pocket 3. And I understand if it looks different to you, but for me, this category goes to the Pocket 3. Definitely the iPhone's biggest strength in this comparison are the 3 different cameras with the 3 different focal lengths. This leads to significantly more flexibility and a greater variety of uses. At 20mm, the lens of the Pocket 3 is visibly wider than the main lens of the iPhone. And this is also very useful for vlogging, for example. There is also a 15mm attachment lens for the Pocket 3, which is almost as wide as the ultra-wide lens of the iPhone. What the Pocket 3 lacks completely, however, is a higher focal length. This is a shortcoming, especially for close-ups of the face. The iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max come with a very useful 120mm telephoto lens. In addition, the iPhone can shoot with a zoom factor of 2, meaning an additional focal length of 48mm with almost no loss of quality. And this is also very useful. On the other hand, the digital 2x zoom of the Pocket 3 is not recommended, as it leads to a greatly reduced image quality. This point clearly goes to the iPhone. The wide main lens and the ultra-wide lens of the iPhone have a high resolution 48 48 megapixel sensor. Nevertheless, I wouldn't say that the iPhone's footage has more detail than the Pocket 3's shots. Of course, it's difficult to compare the details of shots with different focal lengths. But the Pocket 3 has a very detailed image. In photo mode, it's a different story. But in video mode, it's a draw for me. We've already seen that the iPhone probably does a certain amount of HDR processing in the background. This leads to an extremely high dynamic range. Even the best sensor can't keep up with that. Even if the iPhone's shot sometimes get a somewhat artificial HDR look, the iPhone protects the highlights visibly better overall than the Pocket 3. At the same time, the iPhone 16 Pro shows more detail in the dark areas. Both cameras still have a profile with higher brightness levels, which is suitable for an HDR-capable screen. On the Pocket 3, this is called HLG. On the iPhone, it's called HDR Dolby Vision. Especially when you view the shots on the iPhone display, the results look very cool. And I think it's great that the Pocket 3 also offers such a profile. Overall, however, the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max win the dynamic range category. One of the few really important improvements of the iPhone 16 Pro's camera compared to the 15 Pro is that the iPhone 16 Pro is now able to take slow motion shots in 4K at 120 frames per second for the first time. And this is a really important new feature, because not only can you capture and slow down action shots in high quality, you can also use 4K 120 to take smooth cinematic B-roll shots. This means that the iPhone has gained a feature that many cameras already have, including the Pocket 3, which can also take very nice slow motion shots in 4K at 120 frames per second. Although here too, you can clearly see that the iPhone protects the highlights better. Both cameras can also take slow motion shots at 240 frames per second, albeit in significantly poorer quality. 1 point for both devices. Low light is certainly one of the most important categories in this comparison, because when vlogging or even when taking shots of the family, you sometimes want to take shots in difficult lighting conditions. And in this category in particular, it's important to consider the three cameras of the iPhone 16 Pro separately. This is because the telephoto lens and the camera with the ultra-wide lens perform significantly worse in low light than the wide main camera. And in this comparison, you can see that the ultra-wide lens cannot keep up with the Pocket 3 in low light. But if you compare shots from the iPhone's main lens with the Pocket 3, the result is no longer so clear. Especially when the shots don't involve fast movements, the iPhone 16 Pro can keep up quite well. This is not surprising, because although it has a smaller sensor, it has a larger aperture than the Pocket 3. The considerable differences in the look of the two cameras are also noticeable in low light, and the Pocket 3 comes out on top at the latest when moving around in low light conditions. The gimbal and the fact that the Pocket 3 does not depend on electronic image stabilization simply help here. This is because electronic image stabilization requires particularly fast shutter speeds and sharp images, and can therefore no longer work as efficiently in low light. Overall, the Pocket 3 wins in the low light category. But the iPhone not only features electronic image stabilization, at least the main lens is also optically stabilized. Can this combination keep up with the Pocket 3's gimbal? You can see very clearly here in a direct comparison that the Pocket 3's shot is significantly better stabilized. Incidentally, this also applies when we shoot with the ultra-wide lens on the iPhone. Even the ultra-wide lens of the iPhone cannot compete with the Pocket 3. The Pocket 3's shot is even more stable than a shot taken using the iPhone's action mode. And I would advise against using the action mode. It leads to a strong crop and greatly reduced image quality. This point clearly goes to the Pocket 3. Depending on what you want to film with a camera, the maximum possible recording time may be of interest. Battery life and possible overheating also play a role here. I did a test here in the office at 21 degrees Celsius in 4K 60. Neither device had any problems with overheating under these conditions. The Pocket 3 shoots in 4K 60 for 1 hour and 45 minutes. The iPhone still has a battery capacity of 45% after more than 2 hours of shooting. The battery handle included in the Creator Combo can extend the runtime of the Pocket 3 by up to 62%. But if a long battery life is very important to you, then you should go for the iPhone 16 Pro, or even better, the Pro Max. 1 point for the iPhone. Both cameras produce a blurred background when the subject is in the foreground. This is one of the reasons why both devices need a well-working autofocus. The autofocus of the iPhone generally always works perfectly. I've been filming with an iPhone for a long time and I never have any problems with focus hunting. I have also only very rarely noticed this with the Pocket 3. In this direct comparison test, it's noticeable that the iPhone reacts slightly faster. Even in backlit situations, the autofocus usually works very well on both devices. It's impossible for me to determine a clear winner here. 1 point for both cameras. In terms of audio, the Pocket 3 does a slightly better job of suppressing background noise. Wind noise, for example, is barely noticeable. On the other hand, the voice sounds much clearer on the iPhone. I think both devices are great options for vlogging. And even if we are now testing the internal microphones, there are of course many options of attaching external microphones to both devices. Even if it doesn't look like so, I'm holding both devices at the same distance right now. The iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max can also record spatial audio, and with the right playback device can reproduce spatial sound. With Audio Mix, the audio recording can also be edited in the standard Photos app. For me, the iPhone has a slight advantage here. That's why this point goes to the iPhone. On the Pocket 3, you can adjust all exposure settings manually, and you can also control the noise reduction or the sharpness of the shot, for example. On the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max, all of this is only possible with an additional third-party app. The standard camera app does not allow manual exposure settings. Instead, the iPhone enables shots in ProRes, an almost lossless codec that is very suitable for editing. With the cinematic video mode, the iPhone has a recording mode that artificially creates a blurred background. And the cinematic mode has been continuously improved. And the shots are now absolutely usable and look good. With the ultra-wide lens of the iPhone, you can also take macro shots, which also produce very cool results in video mode. The Pocket 3 is not able to focus this close. On the other hand, the Pocket 3's gimbal offers a number of features, such as auto tracking or particularly smooth camera movements. You can only achieve this with the iPhone in combination with a good smartphone gimbal. That being said, the gimbal also makes the Pocket 3 very fragile. It's almost impossible to protect the device from water or sand. And we must also talk about the display. The Pocket 3's display is not too big, but if you are filming yourself, it's of course a huge advantage. In these comparison shots, I kept getting the framing wrong with the iPhone because I could never really tell how to hold it correctly. Yes, the iPhone also has a selfie camera, but it can't keep up with the quality of the rear cameras. But if you're not filming yourself, then the much larger display of the iPhone is an important advantage. For example, you can judge much better whether a subject is in focus or not. Which is more useful for you now depends very much on your needs. Overall, I also give both cameras a point in this category, and so the iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max narrowly wins with 8 to 7 points. The Pocket 3 currently costs $519. You can find the link in the video description. The iPhone is of course significantly more expensive. Both are fantastic devices for video recording. For vlogging, or if particularly stable shots and shots in low light are very important to you, then I would go straight for the Pocket 3. In all other cases, you could save the money for the Pocket 3 and invest it in a new iPhone. Although the iPhone is of course much more than just a video camera. If you want to know how the iPhone 16 Pro compares to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, I can highly recommend the corresponding video on my channel. And give me a like as feedback if you found this video interesting. There will be more videos about the Pocket 3 and the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. So stay tuned and see you next time.